Good afternoon. This is Paul Harris for Kitco News at the BMO Global Metals and Mining Conference. I'm joined this afternoon with Kelvin Dushnisky, CEO of AngloGold Ashanti. Good afternoon, Kelvin. Thank you for joining us on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You've been CEO of AngloGold Ashanti for more or less 18 months now. How has that adjustment been? What things have surprised you, positive, negative? How's it gone so far?
Well, it's been great. First of all, it's hard to believe it's been 18 months actually when you say it. It's gone like this. But the company has been it's been terrific. Lots of positive things happening in the business, and some of which we're kind of reshaping and we're kind of trying to move the company in a certain direction. But that starts off a really solid foundation. I mean, the people, the talent level that I've discovered, I mean, it's been very, very high. The operations are great. We need to do some shifting, and we're reinvesting in the business in a number of different ways. We've been streamlining to some extent, which I'm sure you're familiar with. But generally speaking, I really couldn't be more pleased.
Excellent. And in that 18 months, I think it's fair to say that the landscape for the gold sector has changed considerably. The gold price has certainly increased a lot, and there's more of companies are moving from sort of repairing balance sheet, paying down debt, now into a more expansive phase, perhaps with dividends, increasing dividends, and looking at growth again.
Yeah, no, look, you're right, and it's great to see. I think from our perspective, certainly the higher gold price is terrific, and nobody is more pleased to see that given our strong leverage to the gold price across all metrics. But at the same time, it hasn't changed our focus whatsoever. So we're maintaining our discipline. We have an investment hurdle which is 15% using a $1,200 gold price. That's after tax. We're conservative in our reserve pricing. We use $1,100 an ounce for our reserves, which is, I think, at certainly at the lower end of the senior peer group. And so we're not going to lose our discipline whatsoever. Our objective is to run the business well and maximize on margin expansion as the gold price continues to stay at these levels. But you're right. I mean, it's nice to be in a position to have this gold price so we're able to generate the kind of cash flow that we are.
The higher gold prices, are you starting to see them bringing in more generous investors, a different kind of investor?
Yeah, that takes a little time, but we are seeing it, and it's nice to see that interest. And so it's something that you build on with time, but certainly we're seeing more interest from the generalist space, and that's very positive.
Okay, one of the themes I'm hearing a lot is companies are putting more focus and attention onto ESG reporting and setting ESG benchmarks and goals. Is that something that's innate coming from within the companies, or is that coming from this new group of investors that are starting to come to the sector?
Well, one of the things I was most pleased to see actually when I joined the company is that it's crystal clear that focus on ESG has long preceded me at AngloGold Ashanti. It really is in the company's DNA. And a particular area that we're proud of is in 2019, for the first year in our company's history, we went a calendar year without a fatality across the business. Now, that should be and is an expectation, but nonetheless it shows the progress we've made. And importantly, our injury frequency rate has also been steadily coming down. That's critically important to us. Climate change, we reduced our greenhouse gas emissions footprint very considerably. That will come down. There'll be a step change of that even further as we transact on the South African business. So those are all things that are high on the radar screen. And you're right. I mean, the fact is we've been focusing that as a business in any event, but clearly our stakeholders, including shareholders, are paying even more attention to that space, and I think for good reason.
You mentioned the Africa divestment that's in process, and the company's refocusing or repositioning, pivoting into the Americas. Why is that, and how is that going?
Well, I think the starting point is important. The South African business, they're very good assets. And so the decision in the first place to initiate the sales process was simply because we've got other opportunities in the portfolio that require capital, and they present a higher return proposition than the South African business. It's a great business. It needs further investment to run it out over the life of those assets. And we're really pleased that the transaction that we've entered into with Harmony will ensure the assets continue on for a long period of time. So we think it's a win-win-win. It's a win for our company. We think it's a win for Harmony. We think it's a win for South Africa. And as far as it's not a pivot away from Africa necessarily. 50% of our production roughly will come from the continent following this transaction. We do have production as well, as you're correctly indicate, from Australia, from Brazil, from Argentina. And Colombia is kind of the next area of growth for us, both in partnership with Gramalote with B2 Gold at Gramalote, and then the asset we own at Quebradona.
And how is your developments in Colombia advancing? You know, what's the goal there? Is there a timeline on that?
Yeah, there is. They're both advancing very well, kind of in tandem in a sense. So last year we announced that B2 Gold has become the operator of the Gramalote JV. Great partner. I mean, they have a proven track record of building mines well and operating. So, and they're moving that feasibility study forward, which allows us to focus 100% on Quebradona, which we're also moving forward through feasibility, and we expect both feasibility studies to be in hand sometime around the end of the year, maybe sooner, but around the end of the year.
So you could be faced with a couple of significant investment decisions, luxury problem.
Yeah, we could, and that's exactly how I consider it. It's nice to have the option, and we'll see how they play out. We're not going to move from our discipline. Our hurdle rate remains the same. By the way, I should make the point that while our hurdle rate's 15% using a $1,200 gold price, that doesn't mean that just because a project meets that hurdle rate that we necessarily invest. That's the minimum. And we'll make a decision at the time based on what opportunities are available.
You're also actively looking at advancing and developing more assets in North America, the United States, for example. How are those plans advancing?
So good. We're in fact doing drilling this year on our silicon project in Nevada. It's earlier stage. So kind of I like the sequencing in the sense that we bring, in 2020, we focus on ramping Obuasi up to full production by the end of this year. We move Quebradona and Gramalote down the track. Then beyond that, we look at silicon potentially in Nevada. So it's nice to have options at various stages like that.
You've talked about silicon in terms of it exists, it's in the pipeline. But you haven't really said much more about that, what you've found there or what you think may be there. Are you able to sort of elucidate a little bit more about that?
We're not being secretive. It's just a relatively early stage, and so we'd like to see how the drilling turns out this summer. We're optimistic, but it's early, so we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, and we'd like to see let the drilling speak for itself to some extent.
Okay, so to wrap up, how do you see the AngloGold Ashanti of the future developing? What will that company look like?
Well, what we'd like to see is a streamlined business as we've been putting in place. We're working on reserve conversion and extending mine lives. We've got top quality assets that we want to be able to demonstrate the extended mine life and better predictability around the mining operations themselves by adding reserves. That predictability and reliability will be key for us as we go forward. But look, our focus is to build kind of a quality producer that generates value through the cycle, and I think we're well on our way to achieving that. Lots of work still to do, but we're on the right track.
So sustainability aspect of it, sustainability, predictability,
correct.
Longevity.
Correct. All of the above. Quality producer. One of the things we've been focusing on, of course, is we're trading out kind of higher cost, shorter life ounces with longer life, lower cost ounces, and Obuasi is a great example of that. So kind of we'll take things one step at a time, but I think we outlined our strategy, we've been executing on it, so I think shareholders have been responsive to it. So this year is all about delivering, and I think if we can do that, then we'll certainly be on the right track.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Kelvin, and thank you for watching, and stay tuned for kitco.com for more from the BMO Global Metals and Mining Conference.